The sacred warning in the endless halls of the Galactic Empire's Grand Council. Ancient banners hung heavy in the stale air. The banners were not just symbols of power, they were reminders of promises made long ago. Among them, hidden among hundreds of forgotten rules, was one sacred law, a rule older than even the Empire itself. Never touch the women of Earth. No one remembered exactly when or why this law was written. Some said it was after a forgotten war. Others whispered of a secret pact made in blood and fire. But all agreed on one thing: breaking this rule would bring a wrath greater than any army. For centuries, the law had been obeyed. Even when the Empire conquered distant galaxies, even when they enslaved powerful races, they stayed away from Earth's women. Fear, not respect, kept them away. Fear of what would happen if they broke the sacred warning. But fear fades with time, greed grows, and pride blinds. On a day that began like any other, Lord Krelth, a powerful noble from the Empire's outer worlds, decided he was above old fears. He saw Earth as a weak planet, its people too busy fighting among themselves to notice one missing girl. He ordered his private soldiers to capture a human woman and bring her to his pleasure fortress. The soldiers followed his command. They found her walking by the edge of a quiet lake, far from the cities. They struck fast. The woman, young and unaware of the danger, had no time to scream. They took her across the stars, deep into the heart of the Empire. Lord Krelth celebrated his prize with feasts and laughter. In his arrogance, he made a public show of his crime, sending out signals across the Empire, mocking the old warning. "Earth is broken," he declared. "Their protectors are myths." For a time, nothing happened. The Empire relaxed. The Council moved on to new wars and new conquests. But far away, in the deep silent parts of the universe, the old warning stirred. Earth had not forgotten. The protectors, silent for generations, woke from their long sleep. Signals pulsed from hidden outposts, from ancient bunkers buried under forgotten cities, from ships lost to history. The call was simple, clear, and terrible. The rule has been broken. Rise. On Earth, strange lights danced over the oceans at midnight. In the forests of South America, old stones cracked open, releasing shapes that moved too fast for the human eye. On the dark side of the moon, a silent ship powered up, systems glowing red. The galaxy, busy and proud, noticed none of this until the first retaliation. It happened at the edge of the Empire, on a small military station guarding a hyperspace gate, a station boasting the best defenses known to the Empire. The soldiers manning the station never saw their enemy. The lights flickered once. The air grew cold. Then silence. When an Imperial fleet arrived hours later, they found nothing but drifting ruins, no bodies, no survivors, no answers. The station's black box recorded only one thing: a single word carved into the metal wall by an unseen hand. Remember. Panic whispered through the lower ranks of the Empire, but the lords and admirals laughed. One station lost, accidents happened. There was no proof, no danger. They convinced themselves the old rule was just a myth. And so, they did nothing. But far across the stars, the protectors moved like shadows. Every protector carried a memory, a blood oath sworn by their ancestors. An oath that burned brighter than any empire, stronger than any weapon. They would not stop. They would not forgive. They would remind the galaxy why the sacred warning existed, and why some rules should never, ever be broken. The first blow had fallen. The storm was coming, and nothing in the Empire's proud fleets or mighty armies would be enough to stop it. The forgotten Rathfar beyond the shining cities of the Empire, past the buzzing spaceports and glowing markets, the old places still slept. Places where machines older than memory stood silent. Places where weapons built not by hands but by wills waited. They had slept for thousands of years, bound by the oath, bound by the sacred warning. But now, the rule had been broken, and the forgotten wrath had awakened. On a rocky moon, orbiting a dead planet, a single light blinked in the darkness. It was not a machine's warning. It was a heartbeat, deep underground, in chambers carved from black stone, Ancient protectors stirred. They were not soldiers in the way the Empire understood. They were not bred for war. They were war itself. Beings who had lived through the fires of Earth's oldest battles, who had seen the sky torn apart by human rage, who had sworn to remain hidden until the time came. Now, that time had come. High Protector, Kalen opened his eyes. His body was covered in marks of old wars, scars that told stories no songs dared to sing. He rose without a word, feeling the call burning in his blood. Others rose with him, men, women, and those beyond both, all linked by a bond stronger than flesh. Across the galaxy, the same awakening spread. In the hidden caves under the seas of Europa, figures stepped into forgotten armors, breathing life into machines that once moved mountains. In the deserts of Mars, a giant long buried under red sands shook the dust from his shoulders and turned his gaze to the stars. On a silent station orbiting a black hole, a ghost crew rebooted systems meant to reshape the battlefield itself. None of them spoke. Words were not needed, only the mission mattered now. Remember the rule, punish the broken oath, restore the balance. Back in the Empire, Lord Krelth celebrated still, blind to the darkness gathering. He feasted in golden halls, surrounded by creatures who cheered his defiance of old fears. He wore the kidnapped human, girl like a trophy, displayed her sorrow like a victory. But fear crept into the edges of his court. Ships failed to report in. All messages from the outer sectors grew silent. Trading routes turned black. Whispers spread. What if the old stories are true? What if they come? What if we are already too late? The Empire sent elite hunters into the void. They found only wreckage. Entire planets stripped clean of life. Stations twisted and shattered as if by giant invisible hands. Ships reduced to silent. Bones drifting through cold space. The hunters never returned. Fear gripped the heart of the Empire like a tightening fist. The council called emergency meetings, shouting at each other across marble halls. "This is a rebellion," some cried. "This is a natural disaster," others shouted. But in the secret corners, in the quiet places where truth could not be hidden, they knew. The forgotten wrath of Earth had returned, and it was only the beginning. Across the stars, a silent message was burned into the wreckage of every destroyed station. The rule was clear. You broke it. Now face what you feared. Panic became terror. Lords hid in underground bunkers. Traders abandoned their routes and fled for deep space. Entire systems declared neutrality, praying it would save them. But the protectors of Earth were not looking for alliances. They were not looking for mercy. They were looking for justice. And justice would be given without pity, without hesitation. Deep inside his throne room, Lord Krelth laughed nervously, ordering more guards, more ships, more weapons. But he could not shake the feeling. A feeling that somewhere, very close now, something ancient had set its eyes on him, and it was coming. Unstoppable. Silent. Full of wrath, forgotten by time but not by Earth. And when it reached him, no wall, no army, no plea would be enough to save him. The first retaliation. The night was silent on the Empire's outpost planet Varthun 7. No storms raged, no creatures stirred. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Soldiers walked their rounds lazily, half bored, half distracted. They had heard the rumors, stations vanishing, fleets falling, whispers of ancient protectors rising from Earth. But they did not believe. Not really. Not until the stars above them began to die. One by one, the stars flickered and vanished, swallowed by darkness that moved faster than any natural cloud. The soldiers looked up in confusion, and then the first attack came. Out of the shadows, shapes moved. Not ships, not creatures. Something in between. Silent, unstoppable. The first defense turrets fired wildly, beams of red and gold cutting through the air, but nothing hit. The shapes moved too fast, too precise. Within seconds, the outer walls of the base crumbled like sand. Alarms screamed. Soldiers rushed to their posts, shouting orders, firing in every direction. But it was useless. The invaders didn't use ships or guns. They used the oldest weapons of all: fear, speed, and power. The protectors moved through the base like ghosts, striking without mercy. One by one, the Empire's finest soldiers fell. No last words, no chance to surrender. Only silence, only judgment. In the command center, General Vark tried to send a distress signal. His hands trembled as he pressed the buttons, calling for reinforcements, for help, for anything. A shadow fell across his desk. He looked up, and for the first and last time in his life, he saw what true fear looked like. A protector stood before him, wrapped in armor that shimmered like night sky, holding a weapon made of pure light. The general opened his mouth to plead, to explain, to beg. The protector said nothing, only raised his weapon, and with a flash of silent fire, the general was no more. Across Varthun 7, the same scene played out. Not a single soul was spared. No prisoners were taken. No mercy was shown. By dawn, this planet was nothing but ashes and broken stone. Above the ruins, carved deep into the mountainside where all could see, the protectors left their message. You were warned. Back in the heart of the Empire, panic exploded. News of Varthun 7's destruction spread faster than light. The great lords shouted at their generals, demanding answers. How could one forgotten planet fall so easily? How could the mighty Empire's armies be wiped out by ghosts? The Emperor himself, Lord Threx, sat on his black throne, his face pale with fear. He had ruled through terror for centuries. But now he faced something he could not terrify. He faced a wrath that had waited for centuries, a fury that no weapon could block. He called for his advisors, for his scientists, for his warlords. Find them, he roared. Destroy them. But no one could find the protectors. They struck where they wished, when they wished. No pattern, no warning. The Empire's fleets spread thin, chasing shadows, and every day, more stations, more colonies, more cities vanished into dust. Some tried to flee to the far edges of the galaxy. They did not make it. Others tried to hide deep underground, building shields and traps. It made no difference. The protectors came, always, unstoppable, unseen. The galaxy began to whisper new names for them: the ghosts of Earth, the silent storm, the last vengeance. And everywhere the same fear grew. If the humans had slept for this long, hiding such power, what else had they hidden? What else waited in the dark, bound by old oaths, ready to rise? Inside his fortress, Lord Krelth watched the reports with growing horror. His laughter was gone now. He clutched the arms of his golden throne, feeling the weight of his crime closing in. He had thought himself clever. He had thought the rule was dead. But he was wrong. And, soon, the protectors would come for him too. The first retaliation was only the beginning. The real storm was still coming, a storm that would not stop until the galaxy remembered the truth. Earth's women were sacred, Earth's wrath was eternal, and Earth's protectors never forgot. The awakening of the defenders, the Empire was breaking. It cracked not because of a larger army or a stronger weapon, but because of fear. Fear of the unseen. Fear of the old wrath. Fear of Earth. As more colonies fell silent, as more fleets disappeared without a trace, the leaders of the Empire gathered in dark rooms, whispering desperate plans. But it was too late. The protectors had only just begun. Far from the crumbling cities of the Empire, across hidden places no one remembered, the true defenders awakened. They were not soldiers. They were guardians. Men and women who lived normal lives among humans for generations, blending in, waiting. They were farmers who plowed fields by day but practiced ancient fighting arts by night. They were teachers who taught peace but remembered the arts of war. They were scientists who studied the stars but kept weapons older than memory hidden, in secret vaults. And when the sacred warning was broken, they rose without question, without hesitation. Their leader was a woman named Elena. On Earth she was a librarian, quiet and kind, spending her days among books no one read anymore. But when the signal reached her, a sound only her blood could hear, she locked the doors of her library for the last time. She traveled to an old bunker hidden beneath the mountains, a place built before even the oldest wars of history. Inside, she found the others already waiting. Young, old, rich, poor. It did not matter. They all carried the same fire in their hearts. They all remembered the same rule, and they all understood the same truth. The galaxy had broken the oath, and now, the defenders would remind them why the oath was made. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady. "We are the last line," she said, "the shield of the forgotten, the sword of the silent." She raised a hand, and in it, a blade of light formed. Simple, pure, unstoppable. "We do not seek war," she said, "but we will bring justice." The defenders raised their weapons in silent agreement. No speeches, no glory, only duty. They left Earth quietly, moving through secret paths in space known only to a few. No Empire sensor could detect them. No trap could stop them. Wherever the Empire had spread its pride, they struck, not with fleets or armies, but with precision. A factory producing weapons for the Empire. Gone within minutes, its workers unharmed, its masters erased. A training base breeding soldiers for conquest. Silenced. Before the sun rose, a command ship coordinating attacks on distant worlds found adrift. Its systems frozen, its officers missing. The defenders moved like whispers, like wind, like a memory of something terrible and pure. And with each strike, the message became louder. The humans had returned, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to remind the galaxy that some rules were not made to be broken, and that some promises were kept forever. Back on his golden throne, Lord Krelth felt the pressure closing in. His fortress was the last stronghold untouched. The woman he had kidnapped still lived, locked away, her spirit unbroken despite his cruelty. In her eyes burned a fire that no cage could extinguish. Sometimes, late at night, Krelth thought he heard footsteps in the halls. Soft, steady, inevitable. He doubled the guards. He sealed the gates. He armed the skies with every weapon the Empire could build. But deep inside, he knew, they were coming, not just for him, not just for vengeance, but for a greater truth, one the Empire had forgotten in its pride. You do not touch the women of Earth, not because humans are weak, but because when Earth's defenders rise, nothing in the galaxy can stand against them. And now, the defenders had risen. The real battle was about to begin. The Galactic Empire trembles. The Empire had ruled for so long that they forgot what fear truly felt like. They built cities that touched the sky. They commanded fleets that darkened the stars. They enslaved worlds with a single word. But now, fear lived inside their golden walls. Fear whispered in their grand halls. Fear crept through the dreams of their mighty lords, because the humans had come, and they had brought the forgotten wrath with them. News poured in every hour. Fortresses once thought unbreakable were reduced to ashes. Warships, once symbols of power, drifted silently through space, their crews gone without a trace. Even the Empire's secret hideouts, places hidden beyond normal space, were found and destroyed. It was not an invasion. It was a reckoning, a reminder. The defenders struck with no mercy and no warning, and they always left the same message behind, carved into stone, burned into metal, whispered into the minds of survivors. You were warned. Inside the Imperial Court, Lord Krelth screamed at his advisors. Why have they not been stopped? He roared. The generals could only bow their heads in shame. They had sent their finest armies. They had used their deadliest weapons. Nothing worked. The humans were faster, stronger, smarter, and worse. They were angry. An anger deeper than time itself. An anger that no wall, no shield, no plea could stop. Send the black fleets, Krelth ordered. Empty the prisons. Flood the stars with every weapon we have. The generals obeyed. Ships launched from every imperial world. Millions of soldiers marched into the void. They searched every system, every moon, every hidden rock. They found nothing. Because the defenders did not fight where the Empire was strong. They fought where the Empire was blind. They hit supply lines. They freed enslaved planets. They destroyed communication hubs. The Empire's mighty machine of war slowed, stumbled, and then began to fall apart. Planet governors declared independence. Generals deserted their posts. Small rebellions sparked across the Empire's heart. The Empire trembled, not from the strength of its enemies, but from the crumbling of its own pride. And all the while, Lord Krelth watched from his throne, his fear growing into terror. He knew it was only a matter of time before they came for him. He locked the human girl tighter behind layers of force fields and soldiers. But deep down, he knew. No wall could hold back the storm that was coming. On Earth, the defenders prepared for their final move. Elena stood before her warriors, her blade of light humming softly in the dark. "We were not made for conquest," she said. "We were not born for glory." She looked at each of them, her eyes hard. "We were made for justice." A wave of silent agreement moved through the ranks. Their ships, small but deadly, rose into the sky. Their mission was clear. They would not destroy the Empire. They would destroy the lie it was built upon. That Earth was weak. That Earth would forget. They would remind the galaxy that even after 1,000 years, Earth remembers, always. Far across space in his fortress, Lord Krelth saw the human ships appear on his scanners. He screamed for more shields, more weapons, more soldiers. But it was useless. The defenders had come, and the galaxy itself held its breath, waiting for the final judgment. The final message. The sky above Lord Krelth's fortress burned bright as the human defenders broke through the Empire's final shields. No sirens screamed now. No general shouted orders. No soldiers stood their ground. They had already fled. Only Lord Krelth remained, locked deep inside his golden halls, trembling behind thick walls and energy barriers. He watched the security screens in horror as the defenders moved through his fortress like a wave of shadows. Nothing could stop them. No weapon, no trap, no amount of begging. They were coming, and they were close, in the deepest cell behind a door guarded by 10 layers of force fields. The human girl sat calmly. She had not spoken for days. She did not cry, she did not plead. She waited because she knew. They were coming for her, and for justice. Suddenly, the force fields around her began to flicker. One by one, the barriers failed. The door slid open with a soft hiss. A woman stepped through. Elena, leader of the defenders, her light blade glowing softly in the dim air. Behind her stood others. Silent, strong, unstoppable. The girl looked up and smiled. "I knew you would come," she whispered. Elena nodded. "You are not forgotten." They wrapped her in a protective cloak and led her out, the way clear, the enemy too broken to resist. In the throne room, Lord Krelth waited, gripping a small, useless blaster in his shaking hands. He heard the footsteps before he saw them. Slow, steady. Final. The great doors slammed open. Elena walked in first, followed by her defenders. Krelth raised the blaster, but his hand shook so badly he could not aim. Dropped it with a clatter. "Please," he gasped. "Mercy." Elena's face showed no hatred, no rage, only cold judgment. She stepped forward and placed a small device on the floor between them. A hologram flickered to life, showing thousands of faces, humans, aliens, beings from countless worlds, all of them watching. This was not just a punishment. This was a message. Elena's voice was soft, but it carried through every ship, every city, every hidden corner of the galaxy. "We warned you," she said. The hologram showed the words carved into destroyed stations, burned into broken ships. "You were warned." Elena looked at Krelth, her eyes hard as iron. "You broke the sacred rule," she said. "You touched what was never yours to touch." Krelth dropped to his knees, sobbing. I didn't know," he whispered. Elena shook her head slowly. "Ignorance is no shield." She raised her blade, but she did not strike. Instead, she pressed a button on the device. Immediately, the galaxy saw Lord Krelth's crimes, the abduction, the cruelty, the defiance of the sacred warning. There would be no trial. There would be no need. His shame would be his prison. His fear would be his guard. His legacy would be his punishment. As the defenders turned away, leaving him trembling in the ruins of his own empire, Elena spoke one last time. Not to Krelth, but to the entire galaxy. The universe has many rules, she said. Break any you want, steal, fight, conquer. She paused, but never touched the Earth's women. The message echoed across the stars, a reminder, a promise. A warning written not in treaties but in blood and fire, a warning the galaxy would never forget again. A new law among the stars. The fall of Lord Krelth was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, his defeat shook the very foundations of power. Worlds that once bowed to the Empire raised their heads. Planets once chained by fear found new strength. Rulers, who thought themselves untouchable, now whispered of Earth's protectors in awe and terror. The message had been clear. The warning had been delivered. The price of breaking the sacred rule had been shown to all. The defenders did not stay to conquer. They did not raise flags or build thrones. They returned the kidnapped girl safely to her home, where her family waited with open arms and tearful smiles. They watched from the shadows as she laughed again, free, and then, without a word, they left. Their mission was complete, their oath fulfilled, but the galaxy would never be the same. At the next Grand Council, where hundreds of species gathered, to rebuild what the Empire had destroyed, the first new law was agreed upon without argument. No race, no leader, no empire would ever harm Earth or its people again, especially the women. The law was simple, burned into every star chart, every treaty, every heart. Earth is sacred. Touch it at your own peril. The protectors became legends, their names forgotten, but their deeds remembered. Songs were sung in hidden corners of the universe. Tales were told around fires on distant planets. Stories of how a quiet world, once overlooked, once mocked, had risen with a fury no empire could withstand. How their guardians moved like ghosts, how their promise lasted beyond time, and how even the stars bowed to the spirit of Earth when angered. Back on Earth, life returned to its quiet rhythm. Humans went back to building, dreaming, and reaching for the stars, unaware of how close their defenders always watched from the shadows. Ready, waiting. Not for glory, not for power, but for a promise, a sacred duty. Because in the deep heart of the universe, only one rule was whispered with true fear and true respect. Never touch the women of Earth, and if you did, you would answer to them, to the forgotten, to the defenders, to the wrath that would never die.